Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Oh, very good. I'm just hoping it warms up a little bit.
Yeah, I was surprised. Like I was mentally conscious of what the temperature was supposed to be like today, but when I went out there early this morning, I was like, whoa. I had a hoodie and a jacket and a hat and a hoodie of a hat. Like cold. So I did.
I do think it's going to heat up though. They said 60s, so we'll see.
I know, especially after last winter, I was thinking, okay, well, this is now the new normal where we're not going to quite get a winter until January. We'll get a few weeks of cold, you know? And yeah, but I was chilly this morning.
And they really are calling for another mild winter. So
okay.
I think that's good, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the bugs next year and the water, you know. I mean, we had a pretty good summer this year with regard to all that. Didn't hear too much about infestations and things, but then people weren't really spending time outdoors too much. So I don't know. But I know there's a downside to having a nice, you know, tepid winter. But that's the way I prefer it. I like it when it's nice and yeah. 4 seasons is okay as long as that 4th season is not too frigid.
And meanwhile, the Canadian downstairs wants incredible amount of snow and chilly weather so he can make fires. And you know, we were first married and I bought him a pair of snowshoes because it actually snowed here at that time. He wore them once and that was it. And he can only wear them now in Canada.
Yeah, the first year we came here, it was a really torrential winter. I mean, it was the first day we came here, there was 3.5 feet of snow on the ground. You know, oh yeah. And I have this video footage of driving through these back roads in the middle of this storm, which was just absolutely treacherous. And we did not have snow tires on our car. And so we learned a lot that day. And then the next winter was not quite as bad, but we still had like 4 or 5 good storms. But then every year since then, you know, we've had a little bit here, a little bit there. Last year, I think we had snow like once and it was nothing. You know, we didn't even have to. My plow, the guy who plows came and did it, but he really didn't have to, you know, because it was all gone by noon. So, but yeah. So how are you feeling? Are you feeling better?
I am. Yeah, I'm still congested, but like a lot of the extra symptoms that were unpleasant are gone.
Good to hear.
That's good. Yeah, I know my daughter yesterday was like, are you okay? Are you sure you don't have COVID? And I'm like, that's the thing now. Like, as we go into the season, everyone's going to be constantly worried if they have COVID or not.
Yeah.
So, but I was like, I never had a fever. So.
Yeah. And there were 78,000 new cases yesterday, 81 the day before. And of those, you know, half-ish or 60% are hospitalizations. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, the 2 days ago, I think it was 71,000 or 78,000, and 40% of those, I'm sorry, 60% of those were hospitalizations.
I didn't know the hospitalization rate was so high.
I don't know that it always is, but right now, yeah, I know. And if we go on and look at how many hospitals there are across the nation and how many ICU units there are, that's not good. That is,
Mhm.
we're reaching our limit, and I just really wish that people would understand that. Um, Maybe go out less, take more precautions. We don't really go anywhere here. I mean, I'll go down and get a coffee or something through the drive-through, but or we'll go get takeout from Mode Pizza, which is our new thing. But other than that, they have. And by the way, if you haven't had Mode Pizza yet, they have vegan options. They have
Oh, nice.
yeah, and they also have gluten-free options.
Very cool.
Yeah, and it's good too. And they're a very socially conscious company, so I like to support them. But yeah, but other than that, no parties, no movies, no nothing like that, no mall, it's no weddings, none of that stuff.
No,
It's
me neither. I'm like work, home, thus the chickens and the ducks and the college. Like,
I love the ducks, by the way. Oh, that's so sweet. So what made you get ducks?
so it was that the woman who we got our original two ducks or chickens from, so she had hand raised those chickens and they're farmers, and she felt guilty about then consuming them. And so Matthew and I were like, well, we can take two. Anyway, she messaged me about 2-3 weeks ago and said, I've got ducks I need to get rid of. And I was like, okay, well, I love ducks. Ducks are cute, And I was like, we can take 4. And then Matthew, I guess, didn't realize we were taking 4. And he started to have a panic attack the other day. He's like, I thought we were going to get maybe 2. And I was like, well, last time I had 2 chickens and one of them passed away. The other one was lonely. They were scrambling looking for chickens to keep it company. And I don't know if ducks are as social as chickens or not. So I was like, I got 4. So now just in case. And then yesterday I was like, you know what? I never looked at the lifespan of ducks. Let me look that up. And it was in captivity. They live up to 20 years. And then he had an anxiety attack that yesterday.
Oh,
like,
goodness.
so pretty much they're going to be with us well into our 60s,
But the good thing about ducks, though, as long as their wings aren't clipped, they'll just go right back to the stream. I mean, so they're birds. They can, of course, they'll come to rely on you. But if worse comes to worse, they are still capable of getting along in the wild. Chickens I don't know. We see a lot of wild chickens around here.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, totally. They just kind of like they walk around like they're in a gang or something. There's like 10 of them that cross the road. And that darn rooster. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out who owns him, but every morning. Oh, they're beautiful. They really are. They are beautiful. But man, oh boy, do they love that sunrise. Boy, do they love that sunrise.
Oh.
And then we have alpacas around the corner.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, and not only does she have alpacas, they're a sanctuary. Not only does she have alpacas, but she also has unique goats. And so I don't know the names of any of them, or like the species or the subspecies of any, but they're so amazing looking. Like some have long hair in their face, some look like a calico, all different crazy colors, and yeah, they're beautiful. They're beautiful. So I like going over there, and she's got some chickens and some roosters too. I don't think she has ducks though. I don't think she has ducks. The guy on the corner does. Yeah. Or at least they have him. Yeah. They've adopted him, I guess.
Yeah, we had that situation earlier this year where we had our pool, the cover had sunk a little bit and the rainwater had accumulated. And so these ducks flew over and decided for like a month that that's just their hangout spot. And so all day long they'd come in and they'd swim on top of the cover of the pool, and then they would fly away at night. Hello. And then one day they just stopped coming. And then when we had to take the pool cover off, we discovered why, because the water in the pool cover had just gotten nasty.
Yeah, very nasty, very nasty. But it's possible they'll be back next year though, because they do tend to follow a path. And we had turkey vultures that did that all the time. So
really?
for about 5 years when we lived in Toms River, New Jersey, the one came to buy the house as a youngster. The following season came back and brought its mate and its babies. And then the following year, yeah, and the clutch just kept getting bigger. So one day we come home and there's like, 9 of them lined up on the fence. Yeah, absolutely amazing. So Sadhvi Ji just got here, so I'll let her in. Okay. And so we're just going to kind of hand the mic over to her. And then what I'll do is I'll edit this video to take out anything that's said before so that it's just her, none of the talking back and forth between us. And yeah, so, and you do what you do. Okay.
Durga Mahima and joining us?
I don't know. She works, so she might not be. She works,
okay.
So she might not be. Okay. Jai Ma Sadhvi Ji, welcome, welcome. Just getting her volume and everything all set. Good morning, Sadhvi Ji. Can you hear me?
Jai Shri Krishna, Shivani is here. Sadhvi Ji will be joining shortly, so please wait. Thank you.
Very good. Jai Shri Krishna. Such a joy to have her joining us.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I can only imagine how busy things must be up at the ashram in Rishikesh right now. I know that. Huh?
I think they're launching or relaunching the RT, but trying to socially distance, wear masks. So.
And you were there, so social distance may be a challenge for that.
Yeah.
It was just so beautiful how it would be so quiet. There really wouldn't be that many people except on the weekends around. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's thousands of people that come together for this beautiful celebration. And yeah, such a magical experience. And Swamiji's been messaging me from the ashram over in Gujarat with all the ceremonies and whatnot that they're doing online there. And yeah, so his ashram is still not open. The temples are partly open, but everything is still significantly limited because their numbers are second to ours. Their numbers are very high, although they have a population that's 4 times the population of ours too, though. So, but.
No, it's definitely best to be safe. I guess the one thing I was very, it gave me so much hope was how many ashrams in India that were so mindful of making sure that transmission didn't happen in their communities. And we're just being so incredibly safe with everything. And that was just really, yeah, it was beautiful to see all that happening.
Yeah. I remember it very early too. It was, I want to say it was in March. It might have even been in February. When I was in India, they were starting to shut things down, and actually, so it would have been February. And I remember when Amma's organization made the announcement that their ashrams would be closed. And then the Dalai Lama also was not accessible to the general public as well, and limited people going into his temple. Yeah, and they really did. They took it to heart very early on. I'll let Gloria in. Good morning, Gloria.
Jai Shri Krishna. So Sadhvi Ji will be on the video in just a minute.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. What a gift to the world she is. Yeah. Oh, Jai Ma, Jai Shri Krishna, Om Namah Shivaya. Hello, Sadhvi Ji. Oh,
How are you?
I am wonderful. I am wonderful. How are you?
Can you hear me okay, or do you need me to put in one of the microphone thingies?
No, we can hear you just fine. Absolutely.
Great.
Yes.
Great.
Yes. Thank you so much for all of the amazing talks that you've been providing during this time. Such a gift to everyone who is able to hear your words of wisdom, and something I absolutely look forward to listening to each day as well. So thank you for that.
It's such a blessing.
Absolutely.
Really, such a blessing.
And it's also
And
very
where-
good to see you again.
Where
Also,
are you based?
I'm in Reading, Pennsylvania. Reading,
Ah.
Pennsylvania. Yeah. And it's also very nice to see you again. We initially met up in Rishikesh. I was there with Swami Adyatmananda Ji, you may recall. And
Yes.
yes. How are things in Rishikesh now?
You know, it's a really interesting, I don't think you could say balance. It's more like a paradox rather than a balance. But on the one hand, our ashram has been basically closed since March. Compared to other parts of India, Uttarakhand is doing quite well. But there's obviously still quite a bit of COVID, quite a bit of need to be careful. And yet people seem so eager to be done with this. And India is such a land, and Sanatan Dharma is such a culture of how you think creates your own reality. And so much of that is true, as we know. And there's a virus. And so it's just this really interesting kind of pendulum swing between, yes, the external world is a creation of the internal world, and therefore how you think is of critical importance. And yes, you have to wear a mask and get a little farther from me, and this just really, really interesting juxtaposition. And, we've just started Aarti last night, and we were noticing already tonight how many people there are, what a crowd there is, how those who are not of the ashram and therefore under our control are not observing social distancing, even though we make announcements and tell everybody to, how people have to wear masks coming in, but then if you don't have a guard standing there telling them to make sure that it stays on, that they want to take it off. So it's just a really interesting, kind of irony swing of this pendulum between normalcy returning on some level, whatever that means, a prayer that we are emerging into a new normal rather than a back to normal. And that experience of kind of the spiritual truth that yes, we create our own reality, that yes, it's all in the mind, that yes, everything is God, coexisting with the reality of a virus that absolutely has the potential to catapult you into your next life, perhaps sooner than you were anticipating. and the necessity of holding both truths in our awareness. I mean, and of course, this isn't new. This is the truth of death, which has always existed. It's the truth of mortality and illness that has always existed. So it's not a new teaching. It's just a bit of an intensification, I think, of a teaching that is already very core to the tradition.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And we're facing very much the similar thing here in the States, as I'm sure you know. Our ashram has also been closed, and we will remain so for the rest of the year because our numbers here are escalating. People are, it's a very psychological resistance to the mask wearing. And so there is this idea that it is taking rights away from people. And no matter how much you might work to discuss with people the possibility that wearing a mask is actually an act of compassion, there is just this psychological backlash to that, which is very difficult to address in a way that's meaningful. Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of it also has to do with leadership. I mean, without getting too political,
Yes.
we do have a leader here who really got on board very well, very quickly. He was in an obvious lose-lose situation logistically, because to protect the health of 1.3 billion people ensured that inevitably there would be difficulty for a chunk of them.
Yeah.
And yet he did what he needed to do to keep the country as safe and as healthy as he possibly could. And, you know, I think that India's numbers today are where they are because he took those steps and because he has been really not bowing to a lot of public pressure to open things too quickly. Whereas in America, not only do you have a leader who doesn't seem to take this very seriously, but you have a leader who seems all too excited to kind of stoke rebellion against anything that isn't of his own creation. And it's just, you know, it's an incredible tragedy because lives are being lost. But he really seems to be very adept at how to provoke, how to stoke people into rebellion, the losers of which are only themselves, their families, anyone they interact with. So it's not him. He's able to do that and to come out as this kind of macho, you know, nothing's going to touch us. Mm-hmm. And then already be in a different state at a different rally by the time the medical ramifications of what he's done in that state are over. And yeah, so it doesn't surprise me that the numbers in America are increasing. You know, when leaders lead like that, inevitably a whole bunch of the followers are going to follow that.
Absolutely. And his enabling of the anger aspect in people is something that I think many of us, at least 60% of the population here, hopefully more, are looking forward to ending.
I was going to say 60% being at least the minimum magic number.
Yes, the minimum magic number is 60%. But I do think that, you know, the part of the phenomenon that we're seeing here is that he is, and his resistance and his temperament is a reflection of a portion of society that has been holding in their anger and have not been given the tools to express themselves, to ask for what they need, to have faith in a system. They feel like they're left behind. And he said, you know, it's okay to express this in whatever way you want. And this is where we find ourselves. So please send us prayers. Yeah, lots of prayers.
Anger and fear.
Yes.
they, you know, when he was first elected, I had this awareness that it was a double part sadness. First sadness of just, oh my God, how could this have happened? But on another level, it was a sadness for the people of America, because what I realized from a spiritual and a psychological perspective was the only reason that he could have been voted in was because of this anger and fear. And it just made me realize how much of the population of America is full of anger and fear and is looking for a scapegoat for the anger and a hero, you know, sort of Marlboro Man hero to whip the horse and kind of ride the country into a sunset of something that's going to alleviate their fear. And I've thought so much about, wouldn't it be great if we could bring about a kind of spiritual revolution in America that was not with regard to any political party, not with regard to any religion, but just with the awareness that when people are not acting out of anger, when they're not acting out of fear, when people are anchored and grounded and rooted in abundance, in fullness. And of course, it doesn't mean that everybody's financially wealthy, but a sense of enoughness.
Yeah.
Not only do they make the right decisions politically, but even more importantly, they become assets to the rest of the country. They become assets to society. They are the ones then who share and who give, because they understand I have enough.
Yeah. It's so very true. It really is. But the question then becomes, I would love to continue this conversation with you at some point too. The question then becomes, so does that start with the current generation of individuals who are experiencing uncontrolled anger because many of them just don't want to hear it? Or does it begin with the next generation, the children, and showing them a different way to do things? And how do we, you know, and this is something that I've also grappled with, and it's much of what we are basing our teachings on here, the reduction of suffering, the experience of a greater unity, and community responsibility as well as self-responsibility. And how do we reach out more, you know, and invite participation? It's a tricky situation. It truly is. Human suffering is no small thing, as we all know. So we did lose your video feed, Sadhvi.
Oh, you know, let me just, it's because there's a call that's coming in the middle that I'm not taking. Okay. I don't know how to make that.
There you are.
Okay, it's over. It's over. So we'll just hope that it doesn't come again.
Well, I know that your time is limited, so I would really appreciate and welcome the opportunity to have another conversation together about this and many, many, many other things, and maybe even how we can work together to bring that realization forward.
That would be wonderful.
Yes, and I would love to introduce you to Jyoti Ma, who I think that you met at the International Yoga Festival this past year, if I'm not mistaken. And we also have a few listeners on with us, and then this will be recorded, and we'll take the first part out, and we'll start with the introduction.
Let me just do one thing. She keeps calling.
Certainly, absolutely.
Let's just deal with this. Just 1 second. Is there a way? Hang on. I think I can turn the phone off on this thing. Do you know how to?
यहाँ के वाईफाई से कनेक्ट कर दो।
नहीं, वाईफाई किसी नहीं होगा, कुछ ऐसा है। But then she'll call anyway. Yeah. So, is there another way?
I can't think of any other way.
Let's see. Give us just a minute. We're figuring out if there's some way to make calls not come. I think maybe that. Let's see. We think we may have solved it. So.
Technology is so much fun, is it not? Mhm. And so we do have a few others who have come on to listen this morning, but we'll put the recording on tonight as part of our evening Navratri experience. And again, it's just such a blessing, Sadhvi Ji, to have you take part in this. So I'm so grateful to you. And so I'll turn it over to Jyoti at this point, and I look forward to continuing this conversation with you. You are an inspiration to myself and to so many. Om Namah Shivaya. Jai Ma.
Welcome everyone to our Navratri program. Thank you so much for being with us again today. I have the honor and the pleasure of introducing Sadhvi Ji. Sadhvi Bhagavati Saraswati Ji is a renowned spiritual leader in India. Originally from Los Angeles and a graduate of Stanford University, Sadhvi Ji has lived at Parmarth Niketan in Rishikesh at the foothills of the Himalayas for 24 years, where she gives spiritual discourses, satsang, and meditation, and leads numerous humanitarian programs. Sadhvi Ji is Secretary General of Global Interfaith Wash Alliance, the world's first alliance of religious leaders for water, sanitation, and hygiene, launched by UNICEF in 2013. She is the president of Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education and empowerment to women and children. She is also the director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Additionally, Sadhvi Ji has numerous high-level international appointments, including as Vice Chair of the United Nations Advisory Council on Religion. She sits on the steering committees for the International Partnership for Religion and Sustainable Development, and the World Bank's moral imperative to end extreme poverty. Sadhvi Ji is a regular speaker at the United Nations, Parliament of Religions, and other large international fora. Sadhvi Ji has received numerous awards and recognition for her leadership role in India, including from the Cabinet Minister of Water Resources, Government of India, as well as from the Ambassador of the United States to India. And you can follow Sadhvi Ji on Facebook, Instagram, for her live satsangs, and stay in touch by visiting her website, sadhviji.org. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Ma. Thank you so much, Sadhvi Ji, for joining us on this Navratri program.
Wonderful to be with you.
So we were hoping today that you'd be able to share a little bit for us about this beautiful program of Navratri. And I know that many of us have been watching your satsangs during the Navratri this past week. And we're hoping if you can share for us some of the beautiful stories or perspective, or even how it incorporates into our daily life and our spiritual path.
So these days have been a very, very powerful, very special time. These, as you know, are the 9 days dedicated to the Mother Goddess. And each day we've taken a different form of the goddess. Each day is dedicated to a different manifestation, different incarnation of the Divine Mother. But at the core, it's all the Mother Goddess. And it's all that powerful energy. And what we see, though, is how she has so many different forms and so many different stories. For me, the most powerful way of really thinking about it in a nutshell, you can say, is the 3 forms. Today is Vijayadashmi. It's the day that Ma Durga, finally, after a 9-day battle, vanquished, had victory over the demon Mahishasura. And it's a long story. It's a story that's been told in so many different forms over the last 9 days. But to me, really the core, most beautiful aspect of it is that this demon had wanted to be immortal. as so many of the demons throughout the scriptures, throughout history have. But of course, we know that that's kind of the one boon that you can't get, because it absolutely defies nature. And so no matter who asks for it, no matter what sadhana they do, what tapasya they do, whether, you know, it's any sadhana, any tapasya, any mantra, anything they do, no one has been given this boon of immortality. So then he asks, okay, so make me at least invincible to men and to the devas, to the divine beings. But the divine beings with the masculine energy. So he gets this boon. And in his mind, then he's immortal. I mean, if no man and no Dev can kill me, it means I'm immortal. And so he went through being the demon, killing and destroying and devastating and terrorizing and doing all the things that demons do. And finally, when all of the gods came together to figure out what to do to get rid of this demon, they finally realized that they needed, through Lord Shiva, for this Shakti, this feminine energy, this female, this goddess to come in order to conquer him, to vanquish him. And I love the idea that the demon is the one who forgets about the women, that he thinks that he's invincible because no man and no Dev can harm him. But he forgets that there's this incredibly powerful force called woman. There's this incredibly powerful force of a goddess. And so Ma Durga, in this particular story, is brought into being through the power, the Shakti, the prayers of the divine beings, as the one who can finally conquer this demon, who can be the one to bring back goodness to the evil, light to the darkness, as we say. So I love that particular story for obvious reasons. But on a general level, in terms of the aspects of the Mother Goddess that we worship, I find it's really powerful to think about them in three forms. The form of Mother Durga, who is the fierce one. It's that form that comes through and removes all of that within us, which is dark, which is demonic, which needs to be removed in order for us to be able to access that light, that divinity, that truth of who we are. You know, when you talk about Lord Shiva as the destroyer, well, he's not a destroyer in some kind of a malicious way. It's a destruction of that which is holding us back in order to make room, to make space, to allow the creation of that which is true. So the darkness, you know, when we think about Kali, for example, another form of Durga, when we think about Kali in this dark form, it's the darkness of the womb before creation. It's the darkness of night, out of which comes the day. It's the darkness of the, you know, the cocoon out of which the butterfly emerges. So it's this sense of a destruction, a dissolution of that which we need to be free of. And that's really important, that it's not about malice. It's not a fierceness to be afraid of unless you are attached to your ignorance, attached to your ego, attached to your attachments, attached to your false identity. So Durga comes through and kind of wipes us clean. You can think about it as sort of the hollowing out of the vessel. You know, on a physical level, we get heart attacks when our blood vessels are full of plaque, right? I mean, that's literally what gives us a heart attack, is the blood is there, but the blood vessel is so full of plaque inside it that the blood can't flow. And on a spiritual level, we get so full of ego, of ignorance, of attachments, of false identities, of illusion, that grace is there. But grace can't flow through us because we've become clogged up like an artery full of junk. And so I think of Ma Durga as the one who literally just cleans out those arteries, cleans out the vessel of us so that the grace that is flowing is able to flow through us. And we then have, of course, Ma Saraswati, who's the goddess of wisdom. And it's the wisdom to know. It's not the wisdom of calculus or the wisdom of physics or the wisdom of literature, or it's not that. It's the wisdom of really knowing the truth of who we are. The wisdom that the third eye allows us to see, that allows us to see the truth of who we are, which is divine, which is whole, which is full, which is complete. When we chant, actually, you have to turn that off. When we chant these sacred mantras that remind us, Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vishishyate. When we chant, it reminds us we are whole and complete and divine. We've been created out of divinity in the same way that when you say infinity minus 10 is what? Infinity. Infinity divided by 7 billion is what? Infinity. And so in the same way, when you have divinity, and we've been created out of divinity, so in the same way that anything removed from infinity is also infinite, but of course infinity stays infinite, as we've been created by divinity, so we are divine. Not having removed anything from the divine, but that same wholeness, that same completeness, that same fullness of the divine is in us. And so that's the wisdom that Saraswati Ma gives us, is to understand you are enough. You know, so many of us move through the world in this illusion of scarcity. I don't have enough. I can't do enough. I don't make enough. I'm not enough. And that illusion of scarcity is what drives us to spend our lives thinking in ways, acting in ways, living in ways that cause us to suffer. So Ma Saraswati is the one who really gives us the wisdom. She's also, interestingly, the goddess of music. And what is so beautiful about that is that in our lives, when there is truth, when there is wisdom, when there is fullness and divinity, there's music. That music flows in our lives. So she's the goddess of the wisdom that creates music in our life. And then, of course, Mahalakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, abundance, who we worship and celebrate on Diwali coming up, but also, of course, during Navratri. And so sadly, people think of her in this tiny, very shallow aspect of somehow the goddess of money, of dollar bills or rupee bills or euro bills, or the goddess of coins or gold. But she's the goddess of real prosperity. The prosperity that is rooted in and flowing out of wisdom, truth. That prosperity of knowing my cup runneth over. I live in abundance because I am one with all of that which is abundant. And of course, that doesn't mean that we're all going to have overflowing bank accounts. But you look at nature. You know, for me, I always take teachings and truths from nature. And you look at nature, and even a tree like the apple tree or the orange tree that just gives and gives and gives juicy fruit. Well, it doesn't give apples 365 days a year, every year, forever. It has seasons. There are seasons of fruit giving, and then there are seasons of not fruit giving. There are dry seasons and wet seasons and hot seasons and cold seasons in nature. And we are part of nature. And so when we think about abundance, it's really important for us to realize that abundance is not about what's flowing out over my wallet, over my pocket, out of my purse. Abundance is my experience. And for me, that was always such a powerful teaching here in India, having come from America, where people have so much but move through the world with such an experience of lack, to here, where people had so little but moved through the world with such an experience of abundance. And that's really the greatest and most powerful blessing. And I think the only other piece that I would mention, I mean, there's so much to share, but the only other really essential piece you can say is this awareness that the divine feminine exists not just in these beautiful Devis we worship in our mandirs, whether it's Ma Durga, whether it's Kali Ma, whether it's Ma Saraswati, whether it's Ma Lakshmi, whatever form it is, that the divine mother, the divine goddess, lives in our homes, in our communities, as our daughters, as our sisters, as our wives, as our mothers, as the woman checking you out at the grocery store, as anything in any job, wherever you go, wherever you meet, your neighbors. These women, these girls, these are the embodiment of the divine feminine, of the divine goddess. And so that same love and reverence that we have for the Devi in our mandir is so important to have for the Devi in these beautiful embodiments. And also, of course, our Mother Earth and our Mother Nature. You know, in Sanskrit, the word for nature, prakriti, is feminine. Earth, dharti, feminine. Shrishti, creation, feminine. Shakti, the power that makes it all, feminine. And so as we worship the Mother Goddess, as we worship the Divine Feminine, it means we take care. We take care of our air, our soil, our land, our water, our trees, in what we eat, in what we wear, in how we live, in how we move through the world. We understand every tree, every river is an embodiment of the Divine Mother. Every mountain, every forest, every leaf, everything is an embodiment of the Divine Mother. And so we respect and we celebrate and we take care to protect and to preserve that presence of the Divine Mother here on earth.
Such a beautiful offering, Sadhvi Ji. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. If you have a few more moments to share with our listeners, in the United States, I'm sure that you are very familiar with this burgeoning awakening of people who are just recently being introduced to the Divine Feminine. And in the United States, there seems to be a juxtaposition. Many people feel that being introduced to the Divine Feminine is perhaps a form of resistance against toxic masculinity. So they have a lot of questions. They have questions about relationship. They have questions about approaching the Divine Mother in order to cultivate this devotional relationship. And absolutely, it begins with honoring what is feminine, women, in all aspects of life, Mother Nature and all that this earth brings forth for us. What would you suggest to those individuals, both male and female, who are in a moment with great potential as Ma comes to them with this beautiful invitation, so that they perhaps don't become misled into thinking that a relationship with the Mother might be based on this concept of she needs to come forward because masculinity has become so toxic? There is a reality there. But is that the only reality?
You know, I wish that there were some way that we could impose or enforce some kind of essential, basic psychotherapy, basic spiritual healing for people, so that we could actually get out of our issues with our own mothers and fathers and the games that, whether you look at it through Freud or you look at it through any of the other theorists, philosophers, psychologists, the whole gamut of them, who share with us how our own perceptions about men and women are shaped by our own relationships with our mothers and fathers. And I wish that there were some kind of mandatory psychotherapy that would force us to heal those relationships, so that we actually could move into our lives not carrying our father as the epitome of what masculinity is, and our mother as the epitome of what femininity is, and be able to actually have a healthy awareness and understanding. the Divine Mother is not instead of the Divine Father. The Divine Feminine is not instead of the Divine Masculine. When we speak about Prakriti, it's Prakriti and Purush. It's together. It's Shiva and Shakti. And of course, as you said, it's not about women and men. It's not women embody the Divine Feminine, men only embody the masculine, whether it's divine or toxic. These are energies. These are energies that all of us have the opportunity to embody and to have in our lives. To bring the Divine Mother into our life is a choice for women and for men to bring in that sacred power of creation. Because remember, it literally is out of the feminine here on earth that creation happens. Lord Brahma, as the creator of the universe, of course, theoretically, one presumes, had all options open to him. And the option that he chose was the option of, out of the bodies of women would come creation. Out of the bodies of the feminine would come creation. And so we bring in the Divine Feminine. Because if we don't, we are not whole. It's not a reaction to, it's not an antidote to, it's not instead of. Regardless of whether our masculinity is toxic or divine, we need the Divine Feminine. So what I would say, I mean, this is certainly a topic I would be happy to do another session on, because it's something I think that people would probably want to follow up with separate questions on as well. But in brief, everything can become toxic when it isn't grounded and rooted and anchored in truth. When it isn't anchored and grounded and rooted in oneness. The reason that so many of these beautiful images that were shown of Shiva and Shakti, of Radha and Krishna, of kind of, I don't know if you've seen them, I imagine you have, of these beautiful deity images, sometimes as statues, sometimes as paintings, where it's literally kind of half and half, but it's not divided down the center. It's sort of one leg and one arm and one, the merging and the melting into each other. And ultimately what we're called upon here on earth is to find that embodiment of both within ourselves. And of course, in most cases, most women are going to find it easier to identify with the Divine Feminine than the Divine Masculine. But in order for them to also be full and whole, they need to also find that presence of the Divine Masculine in themselves. And similarly, for the men to find the Divine Feminine in themselves. I remember many, many years ago, there was a woman writing a book on women in India, women leaders, women spiritual leaders. It was called Women Awakened. And when she was doing my interview, we were speaking about Puja Swamiji, my guru. And she said something about him being kind of genderless, as in both. And I said, yes, but it's not genderless, it's genderful. And that presence of both. That yes, of course, he's here in the body of a man. And he embodies the mother in so many beautiful ways. And so I think that toxicity arises when anything doesn't have the ability to actually have oxygen, space. I mean, think about what is it that causes something to rot, to fester, to putrefy, to go bad, right? It's when it's suffocated. There's no air. There's no room. In the same way, our own thoughts, our minds, our identifications, they become toxic. They literally, they fester, they putrefy within us when we suffocate them. This is what man is. It'll become toxic. But in the same way, this is what woman is, will also become toxic. Anything that isn't allowed to breathe and to change and to merge and melt into a creation that is constantly changing, eventually will fester and putrefy. So we all need to embody a lot more of the spaciousness of yes and rather than either or.
Thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful wisdom. And yes, and when we practice Navratri, and I've been very blessed in this life, I was introduced to it many years ago, and I practiced it twice a year for about the past 13 years or so. And it embodies for me the space. It embodies for me the spaciousness to bow down to the mother and to acknowledge her greatness, to also bow down to the father and acknowledge his greatness, and to recognize that where there is toxicity is not a divine issue, but a human issue. It is a human issue of our own identification. And so these 9 days and 9 nights have always represented for me a cleansing of those issues to whatever degree I'm ready or anybody else is ready to cleanse them. And Sadhvi Ji, such a blessing to have you with us today. Yes, I would love to continue this conversation also. And we shall. And so I'll turn it back over to Jyotima, unless there's something else that you would like our listeners to remember, to contemplate on, to think of.
I think to just hold that power of the Divine Mother within the self. To know that she's there, that she's holding us, nourishing us, nurturing us, but that it's also our responsibility to not just bow to her, to not just chant Jema, but actually to serve her in all of her forms here on earth, including ourselves. To serve her, including in the form of ourself and of ourself in all of creation. So, yeah, I really look forward to joining you again. We can set up another time to do just questions and answers about this.
Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Ma. Thank you so much, Sadhvi Ji. And for those of you watching, I was supposed to be at Parmarth Niketan right now for the next month, actually taking class with Sadhvi Ji, but because of COVID, like many of you, we're not able to necessarily gather in person. But there is, again, wonderful satsangs that Sadhvi Ji has that you can find online. She has them streaming on social media every day that you can join, and have restarted Arti at Parmarth Niketan, and those are broadcast live as well. Are you doing both evening and morning? Yes, and so you're able to stream that wherever you are in the world, and if you're unable to join live, the recordings will be there for you to watch later. And the artis at Parmarth are always just the most amazing, beautiful experience in person and online, so I hope you have an opportunity to join. Thank you again so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a beautiful, beautiful Vijayadashmi, beautiful Dashera. and we'll look forward to being with you all again soon.